Hello and welcome to the Murder Mukbang Show.
Hi, everybody. It's been a quite a long time since we've put up a video.
But we're back and we are ready to get started again. And tonight we are going to do Jack the Ripper. And this has been always a very interesting case for me. And it's always been fascinating just because there's so much mystery behind it. And it happened in 1888 London. So tonight for our dinner, we're having shepherd's pie, except for it's actually technically not called shepherd's pie because I did not use lamb. I used venison. So I think the technical term is cottage pie, like when it's made with beef. But since it's made with venison, I'm thinking that maybe we should give it a new name and call it like cabin pie or something. I don't know.
Let's call this Ripper's Pie tonight.
Ripper's pie tonight. Sounds good to me. I like it. So, are we ready to get started?
Yeah.
I'm Ashley.
I'm Brittany.
And we're ready to go. So, I'm just going to give everyone kind of a little bit of a background on just the era and what it was like living in London in 1888. As you can imagine, it was pretty rough living conditions. A lot of people, there were a lot of immigrants in the area from Ireland. There were a lot of Jewish refugees that came from Russia, and it was kind of like a very overcrowded place. This is in Whitechapel, London, and Jack the Ripper targeted a lot of women, primarily female prostitutes, and it's been speculated that maybe like he did more than just the canonical five, but none of them can actually be linked to Jack the Ripper himself. So just a little bit more of a background of the Whitechapel area. There was a lot of anger and hatred in that area because of all of the immigrants and everything coming from all over. So crime rates were high. The police were, having to fight a lot of people because everybody hates the police. And so it was just very tough living conditions. And because it was so overcrowded, there was a lot of disease. We're talking about people living in like one bedroom or one room apartments, and there's like 15 people crowded in there.
Not even any kind of it's 1888, so of course there's not like regular bathrooms, but there was no like sink, water basin things or anything. It was literally just
a room. A 12 by 12 room that these people were crowded into. And a lot of people didn't have money because there was so much overcrowding. There weren't any jobs, and because there were no jobs, a lot of the women had to turn to prostitution in order to make a living or to even just pay to have a room. And so it's said that in 1888 there were 62 brothels in London in the Whitechapel area, and about 1,200 sex workers in that whole area, which is outrageous. That's a lot of,
that's a lot of hookers.
That's a lot of hookers, which that's not the correct term nowadays. So we're going to stick with sex workers. Okay.
I said what I said.
Come on. All right. Whatever. I'm not going to be politically correct. Okay. So like I had mentioned before, Jack the Ripper, his murders have been connected to 5 specific murders, and they're called the canonical, I have trouble saying this word, the canonical 5. And Brittany's going to go ahead and talk with you all about all of those individuals because it gets very gruesome. There's a lot of detail in these murders because Jack the Ripper was a madman.
Yes.
Or woman. Or woman. We don't know.
This is unsolved, you guys. We don't normally do unsolved cases, but this is probably the most infamous unsolved case in history.
I think that if you don't know who Jack the Ripper is, then you got to do some research.
Yeah.
Because I've known about Jack the Ripper since I was at least 8 years old. at least. And that's only because my mom let me watch a documentary on him one time. So, yeah.
I wasn't censored to the things that I watched as a kid either. So I was introduced to things a lot younger than probably should have been.
Hence why we like murder.
Hence why we like murder and why we have a murder channel. I mean, you can blame our parents for it, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Oh, well. So on to the canonical 5. Like Ashley was saying earlier, there are suspected other murders that may be connected to Jack the Ripper, but probably not. In my opinion, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. There's not enough similarities between them.
I think that it was just a really bad area that was in extreme poverty and extreme violence. And I think murders just happened all the time. Matter of fact, one of the short videos that I watched, there was a witness to one of the murders that heard somebody saying murder in the middle of the night, but it was such a common thing in that area at the time that they didn't even think anything of it. They're just, all right, I'm gonna go back to sleep.
But why, if you're being murdered, why are you gonna say
murder?
Like, I don't understand. Like, oh, murder! Like,
oh my god, murder!
With your Cockney accent. Yeah. No, I think I mean, it could that, and that very well could have been somebody else being murdered by somebody else.
Yeah,
you know, or no, like I'm sorry, that didn't make a lot of sense, but like somebody witnessed somebody else being murdered, and that witness was like murder, and then
no police were called or anything. You know, I guess it was just a normal thing. You just walking down the alley in the middle of the night, somebody's getting murdered, you just go on about your business.
Well, yeah, you never know. I mean, they had sex going on in the alleys too, so you just didn't ever know what was going on. People just minded their own business.
Yep. All right, so on to the canonical 5. Our first victim is Mary Ann Nichols. Her body was discovered on August 31st, 1888 at 3:40 in the morning. Now, Mary's throat was slashed with 2 cuts, 2 clean cuts, one which severed all the way down to her vertebrae, pretty much almost decapitating her.
Cut that head almost clean off.
Yeah. And also, a thing that we haven't mentioned yet, Jack the Ripper's murders, except for the last one that we're going to talk about, they all happened very quickly. Like, he wasn't playing around. He went in, did his little thing, and vanished into the night.
Within like 15 minutes.
Within 15 minutes. Like, he killed these women and disappeared, pretty much. Nobody ever saw him. He just was gone. Like a phantom.
There were like eyewitnesses of people in the area, but nobody who could exactly say this is Jack the Ripper.
Right. So Miss Nichols also had some other mutilation done to her body. Her abdomen had been ripped open. Pretty much, if anybody's familiar with how you would gut an animal, that's how he would do this. He would start low in their stomach, go all the way up to their breastplate, rip their stomachs open. Several other incisions had been found on her body. Post-mortem, he just liked to cut up things after they were dead, pretty much.
So it makes you wonder, and I can understand why the police or the investigators in this whole crime speculated that the killer could have been a butcher, could have been a medical professional. But who knows? It could have been a hunter for all we know. I mean, hunters dress animals all the time in the woods quickly, you know. So they can't exactly say what type of person did it.
I think back then with how investigations went, and just because they had zero of the crime scene investigation and DNA evidence and all that other stuff that we have today to catch criminals, that didn't exist in 1888. You pretty much had to go off your instincts, go into a room, look at the crime scene, and make a judgment from there. Try to solve the case from just that. And it was difficult, and that's probably
why a lot of people
got away with murder. That's exactly it. So Miss Nichols was our first victim. Annie Chapman was our second victim. Her body was discovered in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street near the doorway at approximately 6 a.m. Her throat had also been cut twice. Abdomen had been ripped open, just like the first victim. A section of flesh from her abdomen had been removed, and all her intestines were removed from her stomach and flung over her left shoulder. Her uterus and other parts, including her bladder, had been removed from her body. Never found. Just gone. He removed all of her female organs and a couple other things and just skedaddled. Eyewitnesses described seeing Chapman at 5:30 a.m. with a guy that she was probably
screwing.
Yeah, because these are all prostitutes. Every single one of these 5 victims we're going to go over were prostitutes. So it wasn't abnormal to see these women early in the morning with strange men. People probably didn't think anything of it. They were like, "Oh well, she's doing her job, man.
She's just trying to make money.
She's trying to pay her bills,
trying to get something to eat." A lot of them were alcoholics too.
Yes,
but I mean, I guess that's kind of it goes hand in hand.
Yeah,
to cope with it, but whatever.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna do those kind of things in life, you probably have to do other things to live with yourself. Let's not get into that.
Yeah,
anybody. So, the next 2 victims happened on the exact same night. Jackie Boy got a little crazy this night, guys. This in history is called the double event. Both of the murders were committed on September 30th, 1888. Elizabeth Stride was the first one to be found. She was found at 1 a.m. with a single slash to the throat. Now, Elizabeth Stride is the only one of these victims that didn't have any mutilation to the body. She was cut in the throat, killed, and that was it. And it's speculated that Jack the Ripper got interrupted in the middle of this murder, and that is why he didn't mutilate the body like he did the rest of the victims. He pretty much silenced her, probably got caught, and had to disappear. So, a little bit around the corner, Jack decided he wanted to kill somebody else, and Miss Catherine Eddowes was found in Mitre Square about 1:45 p.m. or 1:45 a.m. Excuse me. Now, this is interesting because Stride had already been found, and the police were out looking for Jack. In this time, in 1888, literacy started to become really popular. More people were reading and writing. Not just the rich. It was general population that were starting to be able to read, and newspapers became really big, and this was probably the first case that got a lot of media attention.
Absolutely.
There are letters written to news outlets and media outlets that are supposedly Jack the Ripper sending them in. I think we're not going to talk about that because I personally don't believe that those were from Jack the Ripper.
I agree. I definitely agree with you on that. There were a lot of things that were sent in, and like one letter was sent in like a piece of a kidney, like a dehydrated kidney that was supposed to be Catherine Eddowes' kidney, but it turned out that was a prank from a college student. Excuse me, from like a med student or something.
Yeah.
So none of the letters can be corroborated.
Yeah.
One of the letters did come up with the name Jack the Ripper, and it just kind of stuck. Like that was the letter that the media got a hold of.
Yep.
And the name Jack the Ripper just stuck with him. So his name is probably not even Jack.
No, it's probably not, guys. Sorry to burst your bubble, but that's probably not a real name. So, Mrs. Stride, she was murdered. He skedaddled off, went over and murdered Catherine Eddowes. Now, like I said, it was right around the corner. Police were looking for Jack. And I think we're going to try to put up a little bit of a picture. I found a map to show all the different locations of the murders. And you literally, to get from Stride's murder site to Eddowes' murder site, have to go through the main street in Whitechapel, where there were cops out looking for him.
Yeah.
So he either A, is real sneaky and real good at hiding and getting away, or it's somebody that the police would never suspected.
Like a dapper gentleman in a top hat. Like you're just like, oh, there's a rich gentleman. He wouldn't kill anybody.
Yep. So now, even though Stride didn't have any mutilations to her body, because she was killed quickly. Edo's is a different story. She is not the worst that he did, but this is the first body that he mutilated the face pretty extremely. Her nose was cut off. She had triangle incisions under her eyes, cuts all over her face. Her cheeks had been slashed. Her eyes had been gouged out. We have another picture that we'll try to put up as well of a recreated. It's not the real person's face. It's something that makeup artists did to show what actually had happened to Edo's face. Let's see. Her left kidney was missing. The uterus had also been taken out. Abdomen ripped open. It was the same as the first two cases. Pretty much, they were killed and then bodies mutilated, guts ripped open, intestines hanging out. It was pretty gruesome murder scenes.
Yeah, he took his time with her too, and just mutilated her. Maybe because he was pissed off that he didn't get to finish his first victim.
Yeah,
so he took his anger out on poor Miss Eddowes.
So this is actually the first case that they were able to connect the murders to one specific killer, because there was a piece of a bloody apron from Eddowes that was found close to Stride's murder site. So he killed Stride, went through the main street to go kill Eddowes, and then went back to the Stride murder site and dropped a piece of an apron there. On the way there was also a chalk inscription written on one of the alleyway's walls that says, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." I don't know how. I don't think that was Jack the Ripper that did that. I think that all this media frenzy that was happening around this case were just making people act crazy and do things for attention and try to put blame on other people. And
I just don't understand the term, like, the Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing. Like, that's one that's,
first of all, Jews is spelled wrong.
Well, but see, then it's speculated that was the correct spelling of it, I believe.
At the time?
I think so. Like, when I Googled the word, when I typed in that spelling of it, actually, never mind. I can't remember what I Googled. Sorry, guys. I have been in quarantine for 2 months now. This is my first human interaction. I can't remember anything. But okay, it's not even proper grammar. Are not the men will I can't even find it. The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing. Yeah. That's a double negative. So it means that the Jews are the men that will be blamed for it. I don't know. I don't know. But the Jews were people that were being targeted. They were the immigrants, the refugees that were coming from Russia, and they very well could have been targeted. But again, maybe it wasn't even written by Jack the Ripper, which who has time? If you're in the middle of a murder, who has time to write that with a piece of chalk?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm just gonna take a leisurely stroll after I've brutally murdered these two women. I'm just gonna
drop this little piece of apron right here.
I'm gonna drop this apron right here. I'm gonna write this little note on the wall for the police so they get thrown off. I'm gonna do all these things while I'm still trying to run away from the police that are currently looking for me because I just murdered two women.
Yeah, like, seriously, come on. I don't think so. I don't believe that.
Yeah, I don't think he wrote it either. There's a lot of hoopla around this case because, like I said, I think they were just, it was a bad area and people were just out to lie and make up stuff and get attention. And,
well, I agree. I mean, and it happens in modern society today. Yeah. You see one thing on Facebook and then instantly it's going viral, but then it actually turns out that it's not true. Yeah. It was whatever, but I'm not going to go into that. Okay.
So, The last victim of the Ripper, supposedly, because we don't know if this is his last victim or not, because it was unsolved, and
it was the last of the
it's the last of the
canonical.
canonical 5.
Mm-hmm.
So the last of the canonical 5 is Mary Jane Kelly. Compared to the other women that were murdered, she was really the only one that was attractive, in modern standards, I guess.
During that time period.
During that time period. And she was also the youngest victim. She was only 25. The rest of the women were in between ages 40 and
yeah,
they were older women.
Late 30s, 40s. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she was the youngest victim. And she's also the only victim that was killed inside a building and not out in the alleyway. Miss Kelly was actually killed in her apartment on 13 Miller's Court. It was close to Dorset Street, which I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but that's like one of the worst streets in London for crime and murder, and it was bad place. So Miss Kelly was killed inside of her home. Doors were locked from the outside. The police actually had, when they found
You mean
the body,
they were locked from the inside?
Yes, they were locked from the inside. Sorry. Yeah. The police, when they found the body, they had to actually break the door down with an axe because it was locked from the inside.
Yeah, so I guess she had Mary Kelly. She didn't have a key to her house.
No,
she had lost it.
Uh-huh.
Maybe her boyfriend took it.
Uh-huh.
Which we'll cover that later. We don't know. So basically, whenever she needed to enter her apartment, she had to go. She had broken out a piece of glass of the window, and she reached her hand in and locked it. So, or unlocked it. Sorry. Go ahead.
So this is why I think that the Ripper knew Kelly, because I'm going to go over the things that happened to the body, but I'm kind of putting it off because it's fucked up.
It's fucked up.
It's fucked up.
Very gruesome. I had to, so when writing out the notes for this, I don't know if I told you this or not, but
you had to copy paste
I basically copied and pasted because it was just so much for me to have to like type out. And I'm like, this dude is fucked up.
Yeah.
Fucked up.
So I have in front of me the I guess it's the coroner's report, or what it would be.
Dr. Thomas Bond.
Yes. It's his report of what happened to the body. So this mutilation is said that Jack had about 2 hours to do everything that he did to her, where all the other murders were like 15 minutes. And he took his time with this one because he was able to. He was inside. He was not outside at risk of getting caught. When the body was found in the morning the next day, it was found by the landlord's assistant because I guess Miss Kelly had a problem paying her rent on time.
Well, I mean,
so
yeah,
the assistant went down to the house, looked through the window in the front of the apartment, and he saw what he saw. And it was a gruesome, bloody scene. Kelly was laying in her bed like she had been asleep. Her shoes and her clothes folded up nice and neat at the end of her bed. There was no signs of forced entry. There was no signs of struggle. It's almost as if she was killed in her sleep. She was killed by a single slash to her neck. And there are pictures of the crime scene. I don't know if we're going to put it up or not.
Yeah,
we are. I mean, it's a pretty gruesome picture. But we'll put it up.
It's in black and white. It's okay.
No, the one that I have is in color.
Well, then we'll find one that's in black and white.
It's okay. We'll put it up, guys. It's all right. So,
if you don't want to see it,
why are you watching this channel then?
Exactly.
Okay, so there was a single slash to her throat, and the pictures, like, you could tell that when he killed her, it was just a quick single motion because the cut on her throat lined up with the blood spray on the wall. That's when the mutilation started. After she was dead, he cut her abdomen open, gutted her pretty much like he did the rest of the victims, completely mutilated her face. She was unrecognizable as a human. He had cut most of the flesh off of her face, cut her nose off. Everything was split open. Like, it almost looks like she's a gunshot victim because of the amount of blood and flesh that's just blown up.
Missing.
You can't even tell what she is, but she's laying in bed, legs spread wide open, bent at the knee. He had cut the flesh off of both of her thighs down to the back of her buttocks, and those large flaps of skin were resting on the night table in the room.
It's
along
like,
with
I'm just gonna put this here.
Yeah, I'm just gonna cut this big ass. Yep, let me just make this nice little setup here for somebody to find. This little table setting. So big flaps of skin on the same table. Her uterus was found. The viscera. I don't know if you guys are familiar with what that is, but
it's your intestines.
It's pretty much viscera is
all your like inside stuff.
Yes, but it's like the membrane in between your skin and your muscle that holds everything in. And that was surgically removed and sitting on the nightstand. Like, this guy had knowledge, in my opinion, of human anatomy. I don't know if he was a doctor. I don't know if he, gutted animals on a regular. He had knowledge.
Maybe he was, but maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was just taking his time, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to explore the human anatomy a little bit and see what all does what." Somebody who has an interest in human bodies.
Okay,
not necessarily a doctor, but
just for the simple fact that he removed most of the uterus out of almost all of his victims, to me, that's a sexual crime. And the couple of first victims, the uterus was removed like a surgical incision. One little quick cut. It wasn't like ripped apart or anything. And I don't know. The reason I think he has knowledge of anatomy is because like in our job, when we're sitting in surgery and they're cut open and it just starts coming out, it all fucking looks the same. It's just pink and bloody, and you would have to know what the uterus looks like in order to move everything around and pull it out and cut it surgically. Like,
yeah, that is true. I will give you that. That's because I've seen them pull the uterus out before, and I'm like, that looks exactly like the piece of intestine that you just pulled out. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I
don't know, man. All the tissues in her neck were also severed down to the bone. After that initial slit to her throat, he wanted more.
Yeah, I guess he wanted to try to decapitate her as well.
Yes. Both of her breasts had been cut off to the muscle. Like, they were down to the breastplate. So he cut the fat muscle all the way down to the breastplate. One of her breasts was propping up her head, and the other was down by her leg. Her spleen was also removed. The intestines, like a couple of other previous bodies, had been removed and flung over her shoulder. Everything in the room was covered in blood.
Okay. So everything in the room was covered in blood. Mm-hmm. You mean to tell me there wasn't a single fucking shoe print?
So I watched a video where they recreated the crime scene. Mm-hmm. And the blood is pulled over to the left side of the bed, and they think that's where she was initially killed. And that's where all the blood sprays were at. Mm-hmm. That's where the blood poison was at, to the floor. They think that after she was actually killed and most of her body had been drained of blood, he moved her to the other side of the bed so he could continue to work without risking getting covered in blood and tracking blood out of the apartment. So
I still feel like he himself would be covered in blood.
Yeah, I mean,
even after she's been dead, like, yeah, your blood's not circulating through your body, but you still have blood in your body. And if you cut into it, unless you've been dead for days, like, I don't know. That's just kind of, and then it's like, but if you're wearing dark clothing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you're wearing black, you might not be able to see the blood.
It's 5:00 in the morning and the sun hasn't come up yet. Maybe nobody noticed that.
So she also had superficial cuts all over her body. Not only did she have all of her parts removed, but he went crazy with her. Every inch of her body. Her forearms were cut down to the bone. Her left calf had been slashed all the way to the bone. The muscles were hanging out. Like, it was a gruesome scene. A very gruesome scene.
Yeah. He was.
And then he left, like all the other murders, like a shadow in the night, and just disappeared, you guys. Just poof.
Bye.
Gone. Bye.
My work is done.
My work is done, and now I'm going to disappear again.
Forever.
Because it is said that this was the last murder that he committed.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
But we're not going to go into all those other murders because that would just take too long.
Yeah.
So, are you done with your...
I'm done with the canonical
You're done
5.
with the canonical 5. I don't know why that word is so hard for me to pronounce. It's like canon.
It's a weird word. It's a weird word.
Canonical. Anyways, so now, excuse me. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about the suspects. And there are a ton of suspects out there. We watched a YouTube video that which I can put the link in down in the description below, because it was actually a very great video. So I kind of went off of their suspects because I feel like they had kind of narrowed down this huge list of like 20 people or more and narrowed it down to 8. We're going to do 7. Okay. Only because I didn't have time to do it.
Yeah, if you guys don't know about the channel that she's talking about, it's called Unsolved. BuzzFeed Unsolved. It's a great channel. Yeah. Shane and Ryan, they're pretty good. Awesome.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
They are. So I'll put the link in the description below. So after you watch our video, you can click on their link and watch it, because it goes into a lot more detail about things. So suspect number 1 is a man named Montague Druitt. He had an interest in human medicine, possibly becoming a doctor. He actually lived with a cousin in the area that was practicing medicine, or like going to medical school or something within the Whitechapel area. And it actually came out that his own family members suspected him of being the Ripper, which was kind of weird, because it's like once your family members start to suspect you, it's like, what did you do to make them think that? Well, they started saying that he was like sexually insane and deranged and stuff like that. So they just were like, yeah, he's probably the Ripper. But there's no hard evidence that actually points him to being the Ripper himself. So what's funny about him is that, and I think why he did become a prime suspect, was because 4 weeks after the death of Mary Kelly, his body was found floating in the Thames River. It's Thames, right? Okay. I'm really bad at pronunciations. And he had committed suicide, and so I think he had been dead for like a month, or he had been floating in the river for like a month or something like that. Like, that's what his autopsy report had said. So he killed himself after this. So it's kind of like your family members think you're the Ripper, you're sexually deranged, nymphomaniac, but then you go and kill yourself after the last murder. Okay, kind of suspicious. But no hard evidence. It's suspicious. Nothing we can do about that. So then the next suspect is a Russian doctor named Michael Ostrog. Ostrog. We're going to go with that. Excuse me. So he was a doctor from Russia that lived in the area, but he was a convict, like he was a con artist and a petty thief, but he was also institutionalized for having homicidal tendencies. But the funny thing is that the only act of violence that was ever reported for this guy was he had pulled a revolver on the police officers. So they arrested him, and when he was getting ready for his trial and stuff, he started showing signs of being insane. So they were like, we're going to go ahead and institutionalize you and throw you in an insane asylum. And when he got out, and they were starting to do like this investigation, thinking that, okay, Jack the Ripper has got to be like a doctor or a butcher or whatever. They started looking at the people that had been released from insane asylums, and this Michael Ostrog guy was one of those people. So again, no hard evidence that he was the actual killer. So next we have Aaron Kosminski. This one is, his name has probably been in the news with, ripperologists have been talking about him a lot recently, or in the past year and a half, because it's suspected or speculated that his DNA was actually found on a scarf of Catherine Eddowes. Like, I guess his semen was on there. And so then they did DNA testing, and there was like some kind of genetic, like a genetic defect or something like that, that was like from European descent or something, and it connected to him, but then they got the DNA, the defect wrong. And so we don't actually know if it was him or not. Like, so we don't know, but he had a hatred towards women, especially prostitutes. And he was also a Polish Jew that lived in the area. So if you're going by race and ethnicity, then he's kind of a prime suspect. But whatever. So next we have Prince Albert Victor Christian Edward, which this one got dismissed immediately because Queen Victoria was like, the fuck anybody within the crown is going to be murdering anybody.
Plus he's got 4 first names.
4 first names.
There's no way he could have done it.
I don't know. I mean, conspiracy theorists out there think that he could have. Okay, so he frequented the area to visit the prostitutes. He got syphilis from visiting the area, or so it's said. And it's also said that he fathered a child with one of the local women. So everybody knows that Jerry Epstein didn't kill himself. And so maybe Queen Victoria was like, get rid of the bitch who has this kid and anybody who knows about it. I mean, I'm just saying.
I guess, but I'm just going to put this out here. I think most of these suspects are bullshit.
Yes.
In my opinion, there's only 2 of these suspects that I think is even a fucking possibility.
If you want to go down the rabbit hole of being conspiracy theory with Prince Albert, then by all means go ahead and do it. I don't believe that he did.
No.
It's likely though. So next we have Walter Sickert. Sickert. You know that for a fact? Okay.
It's one of all the videos and stuff.
Okay. He was a painter who kind of had an obsession with Jack the Ripper. He actually even painted a painting. I mean, because that's what he did. And he named it Jack the Ripper's bedroom. So it's kind of creepy. And then there's this crime novelist, Patricia Cornwell. She spent over £2 million on buying his paintings because she wanted to go a completely different direction and go further into things than any other ripperologist has ever done. So she spent £2 million on buying his artwork because she thought that there were hidden clues with him. Like, she did a national treasure hunt. Like, what, you fucking hire Nicolas Cage to come and help you? Like, that's a bit much. You know, it's not, it's not all of Freemasons and shit like that.
Don't be stepping on any of these ripperologists' toes, though, because that's a thing.
I know it's a thing.
We say this, but It's
I know
legit.
I know it's a thing, but come on.
Yeah, I agree.
You're gonna cut up paintings. You're
I
gonna
agree.
spend £2 million and then cut up paintings because
Yeah.
you think there are clues in them.
Yeah, this is also I don't know. I don't think it's this one either.
Okay. So, anyways, so then this Cornwall woman, she also thinks that one of the paintings, from this Walter Sickert guy was resembled the death of Mary Kelly. Mm-hmm. So I'll see if I can find that painting for you and show you guys, and you guys can speculate on what you think. What's also interesting about this guy is that he actually did have a hatred towards women. And it's speculated that he was potentially impotent because when he was a child, he had fistulas on his penis, and I don't know, he had some work done, and I don't know, but then he was married, and then it's also thought that he had an illegitimate child with a person he was having an affair with. So it's back in 1888. There's no way for us to know about this now. So who knows? But he was also fascinated by murder. But I'm not going to put that guy down for being fascinated. We're fucking fascinated by murder. This crime novelist, Patricia Cornwell, is she not fascinated by murder?
Right?
She could be the Jack the Ripper.
I know.
I know.
They need to stop giving this guy such a hard time just because he likes to cosplay as Jack the Ripper. Like, my favorite serial killer is Ed Gein. So if there's a murder around here involving somebody being skinned,
are you gonna instantly become a prime suspect?
Exactly. Like, that's some bullshit. You can't judge somebody just because they like the macabre. That's bullcrap. Bullcrap.
All right. So next is Mr. Joseph Barnett. He is the boyfriend who lived with Mary Kelly at the time. And right before, about a week or so before Mary Kelly was murdered, Joseph and her got into a fight, and he moved out of their tiny room apartment. I shouldn't say apartment because there was like no bathroom or anything.
He moved out of the room.
Yeah, he moved out of the room. But you never know. I mean, it's a lover's quarrel. He could have been pissed. He could have been stewing on it for a week. But basically, this guy, he worked as a fish porter at the local fish market, but then he lost his job. And his biggest thing, from everything that I have read, is that he did not want Mary to go into prostitution. I mean, what guy wants his significant other to go into prostitution?
I feel like he kind of hated prostitutes, though.
I do too. I mean, because he got very jealous because Mary, she did let another prostitute by the name of Julia come in and live in the room with them. And I think that was actually what the fight was about, because he was pissed off about this, and he's like, I'm not having it, and then he leaves. Yeah. So but guess what? He lost his job, so Mary had to turn to prostitution. And so I think what Brittany and I both agree on is that he was killing these other prostitutes to try to scare Mary, but when she wasn't, getting scared of prostitution or, getting away from it, he was probably just one of those people that kill their lovers out of...
He like snapped.
Yeah. What is that? Like a, when the lover kills, like a passion of crime of passion.
Crime of passion.
Brain fart. So there are a ton of like a list of arguments that name him, that point the finger at him for being the Ripper. I'll just go through them quickly. I copied and pasted again. I'm sorry. So you know how I had mentioned earlier in the video about Mary Kelly not having a key to her room? It's speculated that he took the key from her. He hid the key and didn't have her have it.
He also would be the only one that would know that you'd have to get into the room by unlocking the door through the window.
Right.
And like I said earlier when I was describing that crime scene, there was no forced entry. Her clothes were folded at the end of the fucking bed, and she was asleep. Like, you don't do that unless somebody's in the room that you trust.
Yeah, I mean, why would you allow somebody to come in to the room? I mean, I guess if you're a hooker, then you're like, okay, it's just somebody here to pay me some money and to sleep with me. But I don't think
But then
so.
the door was locked.
Yeah.
From the inside.
Yeah. That's true. I would think that if it was like just some rando person, then they would be like, okay, bye, and like leave and not lock the door. But this guy locked the door, hoping that nobody would find her for a while. Yeah. But then this rental assistant guy, he kind of fucked it up by going in early. Mm-hmm. So, his appearance kind of resembled the description that a couple of eyewitnesses had given. He lived in the Whitechapel area, obviously. He also, it's thought that he had also met the other women that had been murdered. And so it kind of ties them all together, even though like they didn't really know each other. But he might have known them just from being out in the Whitechapel area. Yeah, and so again, they quarreled. They fucking fought. It's not a quarrel, it's a fight. Right before her murder. And it's also suspected that Catherine Eddowes thought that he was Jack the Ripper, and that maybe that's why he killed her, to keep it quiet. Yeah. You know? So, and then apparently there was, after Annie Chapman's death, there was an envelope within the crime scene area that was Joseph Barnett's. I don't know. Could have just happened to be he walked down the street and it fell out of his pocket. I don't know. Mm-hmm. He's of Irish origin. So then again, it goes back to being race and ethnicity and everything like that. And it just, nobody knows. On September 30th, 1888, the night of the double event, the escape route taken by the murderer led to Barnett's home. He could have even washed his bloody hands in a fountain near Miller's Court, where he lived at the time. So, could have been. And then there was also apparently a tobacco pipe that was found at the scene of Mary Jane Kelly. So, okay. So I kind of have a problem with this, because what they're saying here is that his tobacco pipe was found at Mary Kelly's room. I don't want to say apartment, because that's not what it is. It's a room. Yeah. Like not an apartment. Like a shack.
It was a studio room.
Yes. And not even as big as a studio room. And they're like, well, if you're moved out of a place, then why are you not going to have your stuff with you? Well, because maybe they were just on a break or something. Because
I think they were still fucking, even though they was not living there anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I think they were still involved with each other.
I don't think that is hard evidence that points to him as being the killer. So it says here he had a reason to perpetuate the excesses of Jack the Ripper. He was not alienated or psychotic, but intelligent and cunning individual who precisely because of these characteristics, the police never managed to catch. So basically, he was able to get away with murder. Yep. So yeah, that's that James Maybrick guy. Or I'm sorry,
Barnett.
Yes, Barnett. Joseph Barnett. I'm sorry, I'm getting my notes mixed up here, because the next guy we're going to talk about is James Maybrick, who was a wealthy cotton merchant that lived in Liverpool, which was far away from where Whitechapel was. So also kind of hard to believe that he was potentially the murderer, because he had no reason to really be in the Whitechapel.
There is some pretty good evidence for him, though.
I know there was. So I'm going to go over that now. So because he was a wealthy man, he had this huge estate. Okay. And a diary after James Maybrick died, a diary was found within the floorboards of his estate. And though it did not have his name specifically written on it, there were things written in there that people were like, yes, this is definitely James Maybrick. There were just characteristics of things, his handwriting, how he described things, that this was his diary. There were gruesome details in that diary that of all of the murders. And there was also like on one of the pages there was a note that was written that said that he was Jack the Ripper. He didn't say I, James Maybrick am Jack the Ripper. It just said it was signed Jack the Ripper.
Yes.
And also later on, years later, I presume, a pocket watch was also found, and it was like passed down within the family. That pocket watch is said to have the initials of every victim of Jack the Ripper engraved on it.
The canonical five.
The canonical five. I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. And then it also it's signed Jack the Ripper, and then also with the name Maybrick. Yeah, James Maybrick. J. Maybrick. Yeah. So like I think not goldsmiths, but like I don't know who they are. I don't know what their names are. I'm sorry. I'm tired. The people like they had it inspected basically to see if they were authentic engravings. Yep. And they were definitely old, but it cannot be pinpointed back to 1888.
They can't determine whether or not the carvings were from 1888. They did, however, confirm that it's not anything that was used today. Like it's a long time ago that this was carved in there.
Yeah.
They just can't prove when. And it's the same thing with the diary. Like they studied it, they traced that back to the same materials, and how it would decompose over the years. They traced that back to 1888.
Yeah. So it's a lot of speculation as to who it was. Yeah. So who do you think?
I hands down 100% think that Joseph Barnett killed all those women. Look, he's the only one that makes sense. Yes, there is some crazy evidence with this Maybrick guy, but it's, to me, that could be fabricated. He could be just like this Sickert guy, and even though these things were traced back to that time, he could have been just as obsessed with these cases as Sickert was, and decided, I'm going to write all this shit down in a journal and put it on my floorboard, so when people find it 50 years from now, they're going to think I'm Jack the Ripper. It could have been faked.
Yeah, it very well could have.
To me, Barnett is the only one that makes sense. Like, he was in a very abusive relationship with this Mary Kelly lady. They fought all the time. He didn't want her to be a prostitute.
And when she wasn't heeding his warnings, he killed her out of a crime of passion.
He was killing all these prostitutes one at a time to try to scare her off the streets. And when that wasn't working, the last night that he was there, he lost his shit because she was with another John that night. And I think she got caught with somebody.
Yeah, because Joseph Barnett was at Mary Kelly's house around 7 or 8 p.m. the night that she was killed. And so he probably knew that she was meeting up with somebody, and he's like, fuck this.
And I mean, plus he's been a resident of Whitechapel his entire life. He knows all the back streets. So earlier when I was talking about Jack having to take the main street to get through all those police, that's a possibility. But also Barnett could have known how to get around all that because he was from the area.
And maybe people knew who he was, and they're like, oh, it can't be him. Yeah. Just like everybody thought it wasn't Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy couldn't have done it.
Also, Barnett had, as far as I am concerned, he had knowledge of human anatomy. He was a fisherman, and I don't know if you guys are aware, but fishermen have to gut fish every day, and they're aware of reproductive organs and everything because of how they have to harvest eggs and sperm from these fish to make caviar and shit. Like,
you make caviar out of
eggs?
Sperm?
No, out of eggs.
You said sperm.
Well, yes, but that too. But egg. He knew about the reproductive organs of fish, and yes, I know humans aren't fish, but he still knew how to gut things, and he still look. I'm telling you, that guy did it. He did it.
Yeah.
She trusted whoever was in that room. He's the only one that would have known that you had to unlock the door from the window to get in the room, and then like
but
you
maybe
said,
he had the key, so he was able to unlock and lock the.
yeah, but after she was murdered, the door was locked behind them. Like,
But he locked it as he left with the key.
I get that, but even if he didn't have the key,
Right.
he would have
He
known
knew how to
the window.
lock it. Yes.
He knew that he would have had to unlock it and lock it through the window, and I don't know.
I mean, I think a lot of people knew that's how Mary had to enter her house, though, because there were a lot of other people that said that they had seen her do that. So yeah.
He also matched the descriptions of eyewitnesses and also matched the description that authorities put in a profile for profiling him. So I mean, take it as you want it. There's no hard evidence that Barnett is the one that is Jack the Ripper, but in all the research that I've done and all of the suspects, and there's a lot of them.
There are.
Actually didn't mention all of them. There's some that even think Jack the Ripper was a girl. And
Yeah.
Jill the Ripper.
Jill, yeah, that's a whole new thing now. Jill
the
Ripper.
So I don't believe that. And I don't know. I've always felt like Barnett was the Ripper.
After doing a lot of research, I agree with Brittany. I think Joseph Barnett is
he's the only one that makes sense.
Top guy. The diary and the pocket watch from James Maybrick, I think he's definitely a suspect of mine. But again, because it's hard to determine if all that stuff is actually authentic and he didn't just, scout out the crime scenes. I mean, and it would also be difficult for him to be in that area if he was living in Liverpool.
Right.
And so that's just another thing. I mean, but maybe he was taking a vacation down there. I don't fucking know. I mean, maybe people hire prostitutes, go to prostitutes. That's true. But yes, no, I agree with Brittany. My suspect is James Maybrick. Not James Maybrick, Joseph Barnett.
Joseph Barnett. Mm-hmm. And you guys are more than welcome to do your own research and figure it out for yourself, because this case is unsolved, and that it's up to your own opinion what you think.
Yeah, and if you guys know of another suspect that we don't know about, that I didn't do research on, that points the finger more at him, who Jack the Ripper is, tell us in the comments. Let us know, because again, this is a case that I have always been fascinated by. I tell you this right now, when I was 8 years old and I saw that documentary on Jack the Ripper, I was pretty certain that it was Prince Albert. Like, that's how that documentary was presented, and I was very set on him until I did some actual research. Yeah. When I'm 30 some years old and not 8. Yeah. So
what kind of research can an 8-year-old do?
I don't know. It was back in the 90s, so this was way before the internet as well.
You had to look up shit in encyclopedias.
Yeah, right. I was a fucking poor kid too, so no computers for me. All right. So that's our story about Jack the Ripper. Again, let us know what you think. Leave a comment, give us a like, hit the subscribe button. We really appreciate you guys listening to us. Sorry it took us so long to get another video going. Had technical difficulties, and then quarantine, and just a bunch of bullshit.
People go through life, man.
Oh,
that happens.
Yep. So, there we are.
There we are.
Thank you, and this is the Murder Mukbang Show. You kill them.
We grill them.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.